Okay, welcome to live editing with Hannah. Um, Hannah doesn't edit any of our images. I do all the editing, but she's always sitting pretty close by. And before I deliver, I always check the images by her because sometimes she notices things that I don't. And most of the time it's things that like I wish she didn't notice. And so this will be fun for her to help me and question me while I'm editing. So I'm going to let her choose which images to edit. I'm going to start through the preset using whatever tools and whatever presets just kind of come to mind and that I think would look cool and that I think that I would have done if I were editing normally. So, Hannah, what kind of picture are you going to see us edit?
Let's start with, I like this one. That's okay. Landscape, it's adventure.
Okay, so this is Matt and her name is also Hannah. So this is Matt and Hannah's elopement out at Sam's Throne. This was last October, and this is it's a beautiful image, but it's also a fairly tough image to edit. I shot this with a 24 millimeter, and I shot it at f9 for you portrait photographers that have never gone below 2.8. F9 is what you use when you're shooting a landscape, or if you especially want to get a sun flare. So the reason I used F9 is because I really wanted to see the sun rays flare out, and you can actually just barely see them. So it was maybe a waste of a really tight aperture.
I can still see it.
Yeah, you can even see some dust marks that were from the dust on the lens because this lens was focusing so much and at f9 that you can actually see some of those show up a little easier. So yeah, this will be a fun one to edit. So let's go ahead and choose a preset. So just hovering over the presets, I can see how they're going to affect the image already. Connection's really dramatic. Experience is a little more toned down. And truth is the most even tone. And Hannah, I can tell, already likes that, but I also know that I'm going to add a lot more exposure to this picture. And so it might even out that little sun flare right there. But just because of Hannah's reaction, let's go ahead and start with truth. Okay, so as soon as I apply the preset, the first two things I need to fix are the white balance and the exposure. So let's go ahead and get exposure a little closer to how I want, which is about here.
So pretty.
I know, I agree. Okay, so now let's get our temperature fix. And sometimes the temperature ends up affecting the exposure, but I already feel like in this image it's going to be okay. Now, I've been to this place, I photographed this place, so I know what those rocks are supposed to look like. They're actually really kind of orangey rocks, and so I want to warm it up a bit, but I can already tell that because of the lens, you can see this big sun flare. It's adding more green than was actually there, and so I'm going to go ahead and boost the tint a little bit too. I think that was just enough. Just like one hit of it up to 14 might be just enough.
Yeah, I like
and
that.
So, yeah, like that's a great image already. But to finish it off, something that I pretty commonly do. I mean, obviously, if I were going to deliver this, I would go ahead and spot treat out some of those little dust spots that showed up on screen. I've already lost some of the other ones. There's one maybe. Yeah, so I would spot treat out some of those. For sake of using some of the other tools that I have in this kit, I would probably add a little bit more of a medium grain to it.
Let me see what that does.
So let's zoom in on it. And so you can really tell the green kind of in the top of the image. And all my presets come with the automatic light grain, but let's add the medium to it. So you can see it's just a little bit of a difference.
Yeah,
a little rougher.
I can see it.
If I were to add heavy, it would be like that. And heavy grain would be cool.
That, though.
Yeah. There's so much negative space in the image that doesn't have the busyness of the rock that the heavy grain works with this one, I think.
It does.
I would also use a brush tool like Burn, and I would brush down some of this around the edges.
Oh, so it makes that darker. Okay.
Yeah, so I would brush that down simply to draw more attention to the couple because I've got this beautiful sunlight that's coming right in and smacking them.
Like a vignette that's like
a little bit, yeah, but without clipping the top corners of the image.
Yeah.
So I dig that.
I like that a lot.
So here was the raw.
Oh my gosh.
And that didn't take very long at all. That was a couple minutes.
So,
and so
pretty.
some of the split toning or the other toning, if I wanted to soften the image even more, I could do that. If I wanted to brighten it a little more.
Oh.
Right. So there's an automatic click there. If I were to use brighten, let's go ahead and do that. If I were to use brighten, all that's affecting is the midtones and the undertones of the image. And so overall, I would still bring exposure back down, and that's going to give it a different look from what it had earlier before the brighten was added.
You said midtones. I don't know what that actually means.
So the highlights are going to be the brightest parts of the image. Okay, so like for instance, we've got the highlights on the edges of the rock, the edges of these trees, the whole sky, and then the parts of her dress.
Yeah.
The shadows are the darkest parts of the image, which are specifically going to be down here, right there, their hair, Matt's jacket, and then the midtones are everything that fall in between that.
Oh, okay.
And so colors and exposure of midtones can be affected differently. And that's why all of these tools like the shadows, the highlights, the whites, the blacks. So whites and blacks on Lightroom, if y'all don't actually know, moving the whites and black slider actually picks how high or how low your highlight and shadow sliders will affect. You're actually choosing the finish line of your highlight slider when you're using whites. And so that helps you affect those midtones more than just the highlights or shadows.
That makes sense to me.
Yay! The more you know.
I don't edit any of these photos. I only see the finished products. So
there you go.
Yeah.
All right, cool. I like that one. That would be good. I'll send that to you, Matt and Hannah, if you're watching this. Okay, so that was kind of a big epic elopement, a little bit of landscape and something with a subject in there.
Do you want to do more of a portrait? Let's scroll down.
Yeah, we could do more of a close-up on face.
What about one of these?
We could do Kiki.
Yeah.
All right, so Kiki, amazing model and
beautiful
human that I worked with at the Styled by Creative shoot. And this one is also different for me because working with a subject that has more melanin in her skin was an interesting, not so much of a challenge because luckily my presets kind of help with a lot of that. And I did that purposely. But if I was shooting film, I actually chose in this situation to use a film that I know has kinder midtones because for more Caucasian skin, most of our midtones, I mean, for me, my midtones are like pink. I have a lot of pink in my skin. For you, Hannah's half Colombian. Her midtones are more of the orange. And for Kiki, she has some reds, a little bit deeper reds in the midtones of her skin that I could tell while editing. But it also leans a little bit more towards like that magenta side too. So for this image, connection is too punchy for me. I can tell already. It's dramatic. It's cool. You could get away with it, but I don't like, because of darker skin tones, you probably don't want darker shadows.
What about one of the softer ones?
So I've got between experience and truth, and I'll tell you what I would choose and why.
Okay.
I would go with experience over truth because in this image, there's so much white space, and then the most overbearing colors are the yellows and the greens, and truth is more saturated in the yellows and greens. And to me, it's going to be distracting from her.
Yeah.
And so experience really tones those down, and you can already tell that it like evened.
Yeah, just that one, just hover over it.
Evened her skin tone a little bit. So what we can do though, let's say you liked truth, but weren't crazy about the saturation. I could do this experience preset and then add my softening tone. And I could just soften it up a little bit. And that's also going to bring a little bit more detail into those shadows, like around her hair.
Yeah, I see that.
I don't have to do that all the way. I'm going to not. Actually, I'm going to. No, I'm going to do it. I'm going to soften it. But I'm also going to bring overall exposure down like just a touch.
Oh, okay. So that kind of.
So it softened it, but it also, because it brought the shadows up, it brightened the image overall. And so I can bring it down. You can see from the histogram up here too, these different colors actually adjust the shadows and the midtones right here. And so you can see that this is on the brighter side, but that's okay because there's a ton of white
that makes
and light
sense
in the
to me.
image. Yep. So let's adjust our temperature here just a little bit. And to me, the dress on the outside of the image, I feel like looks kind of cool. And so I would warm it up overall, but I'm not crazy about how much yellow it looks like it's adding to her skin. You don't really want yellow in darker skin. And so to combat that, I'm going to add more magenta to the tint. and automatically that
Yeah,
fixed it.
that.
Yeah,
So you are, oh wow, just that one little
mm-hmm.
click makes a difference. So you are not only taking into account the whites of her dress, but you are noticing how those adjustments are changing her skin tone.
Right. I mean, in a portrait image, skin is the most important thing to me. But in an image like this, where you've got a lot of environmental factors, people use, temperature cards. You'll use your camera to take a picture of a white or a gray square to tell what the temperature is supposed to look like. It's how people even meter for film. I don't do that because Lightroom can fix all of that in the end. So you just kind of have to know what you're doing. Now, one little thing that you probably didn't even notice is that right there is actually my thumb.
Oh, hello, Tanner's thumb.
So I was holding her veil. And so that's my thumb. So I'm just going to crop that out. I'm going to give it a 5x7 because these tall images, it's very rare that people are going to use an image that tall. And since she's looking towards the right, towards my right,
you're going to adjust it.
Yeah, I'm going to move it over just so it's counterbalanced so that there's some empty space for her gaze to be directed towards. Oof. I dig it. Now, to go further, I could use some brush tools and I could smoothen her skin. I would do that. I would use a brush tool just to smooth a little bit, add a little bit of extra polish. I might bring a little bit more details into her lips because I know that lipstick wasn't actually that dark because I was there. But those are all extra personal things beyond the presets. And just doing this, leaving it with light grain. I could even take the grain off. What would that
look like?
So let's zoom in here so you can really see her eyelashes, the background, and I can just take the grain off. And now it's a completely polished digital image. Like a lot of people really like.
But I see that.
I like the grain.
I dig it. That's a good shot.
Okay, cool. Next one.
All right. Can you scroll down?
What one of these?
Yeah, let's do one of those.
Okay, so this is one we did at our last wedding. This is on Sony. So we're not just using Nikon camera profiles. We're also using Canon camera profiles, some pictures that I got from Joe Johnson, shouts out. And then Sony, we switched to Sony. So this is a Sony image. This is indoors. It's a mix of natural and artificial light. Really, the only artificial light in this whole chapel are these lights across the side. So it's not affecting the lighting in here very much, but we're basically in deep shade late in the evening. If you've ever shot at Cooper Chapel or any of the other big architectural chapels like this in Arkansas, they're not super easy to shoot, but they're so much fun. So I'm just going to leave it. You could tell on the cropping tool, I straightened it just a tad, and then I'm going to leave it this big tall crop because this is one that if I were them, this would be my phone background. So,
yeah, right. That would be perfect.
Right. So again, this is, besides all the busyness and everything going on, this is a fairly clean image to start. So I'm going to bring exposure up big time before I even put a preset on there. I can already tell that Austin's a redhead, and so I can already tell that his skin, we're going to have some of that pink and red in the midtones of his skin, and it may or may not be affected by the presets. We may just bring the tint a little bit more green overall. Yeah. So let's see. Wow. Oh, gosh. So, so that's all right. So this is what the preset does with the oranges. Like, look at just the lights over here and how they're super orange, and applying this preset is going to blend that orange directly into the architectural.
I like made it like so golden.
Yeah, the orange
like
of the wood and
glowy.
everything. So I like connection on this. It's a fairly heavy-handed preset, but like I love it. Like it's punch and it's everything I want in a preset, which is why I made it and why I'm selling it to you. Why? So I like this one. We can soften it. So you can see that. Pay attention, especially back here. So if I hover over soften, you can see that it automatically softens the light back there.
I can see that. You
and
can
so
kind of see more of the trees.
We can soften it a little bit. I kind of like the punch of the dress.
I think I do too.
And so, yeah. So yeah, I'm just going to leave it like this. Let's see, because I can tell a little bit of the red in his skin tone. And so overall, let's see what the tint looks like without having to use a brush tool. I think that already evened it up. So here's the fuchsia and here's the green. That already evened it up a little bit. I kind of like the green tint in this chapel. Some people avoid green tints like the plague, but to me, it looks like film, and I like it that way. with a couple other stops of exposure, it's even brighter. It depends on your style. You could do this like a dark and moody
If you wanted
edit if
to.
you really wanted to. I could do this and then brush
Yep.
just the subjects, or I could overexpose it a little bit and
Go back down and then do what would the brighten, because you have that brighten tool.
right. So if I were to brighten it, I would bring it back down to about just one, and then
see, so you could just use that tool if you wanted to,
and that way you don't have to bring the exposure up all the way.
Okay.
And so that's going to do it just in the shadows, really. Oops. Yeah, the brighten right there. So I'm going to apply that brighten and then show a couple of these split toning too. And so the cool split is something that I showed in the last video where I introduced the kit. And look at that. That adds a little bit of that blue to the highlight and a little bit of the warmth in the shadows. I was thinking in my head, like designing the cool split toning, I was thinking about this chapel and a big long white dress like this and what it's going to do to that. And so I really dig how that looks. Even without, I haven't even adjusted the temperature in this image at all, but I might even bring it down just to emphasize that cool tint.
I like that.
So cool. It's another finished image.
Eee, all right. It's so pretty.
We might be going a little over time, but let's see what else we got.
Should we do a Canon one? Have you done one of that?
No. So the only Canon image I've got on here is one of us.
Oh, well, hello. Oh, this is...
We have this picture printed massive on our wall. Thanks, Joe.
Yeah.
This was the day after we got engaged, and we went to Yosemite, and it was super cool.
I feel so just epic in that shot.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see this.
I know Joe. I've shot with Joe, and on her Canon camera, not only is she using, well, we can see right here, a 35 millimeter lens on here, but she also shoots with a really warm white balance on her camera. And so I know I'm already going to tone this down a lot. And so I'm going to bring the warmth down just a tad because I like shooting warm. I like editing warm, but I also like it to be on the warm side of even. I really try to get an even exposed and temperature photo. Do you want to do black and white for this? We haven't edited black and white.
Oh, we haven't. Oh, that's pretty.
So in this case, the white balance doesn't matter that much, but for black and white, this is almost just a one click, like, yeah, just one click. We can adjust our exposure a tad if we want to, or if we want to keep it a little bit moody. Yeah, one thing to keep in mind, I will say, is with black and whites and with color images, for those of you that are doing photos for clients, the exposure is going to make a big difference for when clients print their images. Those of you that want to stay in a dark and moodier area, I don't know if you've ever printed your photos, but sometimes too dark is too dark. You end up getting a muddy print and a muddy image. And so that's something that these presets try to avoid, honestly. Even if you are editing a little darker and moodier, you can always like try to soften the tones or use the brighten tone or something like that. Yeah. But if I were to do this, I might also add heavy grain because I love the heavy grain on black and whites. And yeah, I really dig that.
Oh, we get to show our grandkids that one day. Like, look at us going across this really slippery log.
So one thing I did do before we printed this image, I also went through with a spot healing brush and I cleaned up some of the graffiti that awesome people did on the logs.
I literally didn't notice that until just now.
And you wouldn't have because I cleaned it up. All right. Well, cool. I think that's it for now. We actually, believe it or not, got to use all 4 of my presets, got to use several different toning tools. And yeah, we'll see you next time.
Yeah, I love these. These are awesome, babe.
Awesome. Thank you.